It was like 2, 3 in the morning. And I just found myself staring in the mirror, trying to bore into my own soul. This voice come out. It just said, dude, you're fucking done, man.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough, and when we do, many of us, including me, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, and hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors, in large part to help or try to help more people in more places feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or Twitter/X @Suicide Noted. You can check the show notes to learn more about this podcast, including our membership. And a special thanks to our members, our lifetime members or monthly members. Your contributions help a lot. And of course, to everybody who's involved or participates, guests, listeners, everyone out there, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. A quick note, if you rate and review Suicide Noted, it helps people find it. And of course, that is what we want. Finally, we are talking about suicide on this podcast, and we don't hold back, so please take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen, because there's so much to learn. Today, I am talking with M. M lives in New Brunswick, Canada, and he is a suicide attempt survivor. M in Canada, hello. Where exactly are you, M?
I am in New Brunswick, Canada.
You know that we don't know what the fuck any of that is, right?
Yeah, I realize that. We border the state of Maine.
I love that. Let's dumb it down for the bald guy. No, it's fair. I got it. What is New Brunswick's claim to fame, or perhaps even your town?
Oh, the claim to fame. Like, I live, man, like in basically like a summer resort town right on the ocean. It gets very busy here in the summer. We're really the hub of maritime Canada here. There's Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and New Brunswick. And that makes up maritime Canada. That's your geography lesson for today. And that was one of the things that drew me to your podcast, because it was like, oh, I really like this. The first few I was listening to, they were Americans, and I'm totally cool with that. And then I was scrolling up my phone. I'm like, a chick from New Brunswick. I gotta click on that. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is a much more wider audience than I was expecting.
By the way, audience, everyone who was listening, M and I are going to use language that we choose to use.
So if M says something like chick and you're offended,
it's simply that. The police language are not fucking here. The cancel culture bullshit is not here. Though the woman who's listening who you're like, don't call me chick. Am I not kind of canceling her now? You see, there's no way to win.
I hear you, man. That's cool that you bring that up. Like, I talk and it rolls off the tongue. And sometimes I get, it's like, as I'm talking to you and I see you, and I'm just like, I'm just talking with another dude. And sometimes dudes talk stupid to other dudes, and they don't necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, let us not hide the fact that most people probably can already figure out we're just two middle-aged white guys. We are.
Yeah, totally. Right. So.
Yeah, we're middle-aged white guys. If I had to guess, even though my income doesn't show it, we probably have middle-class-ish backgrounds. So yeah, that comes with what it is. We are who we are. That influences who we are and how we talk and all that shit, of course. I'm sure a lot of people were thinking we're like teenage Latinas. So I wanted to clear that up.
We're probably the furthest removed from that you can possibly be. So
in many ways, yes. You're sitting outside. Is this or it's in a porched area?
Yeah, it's actually a sunroom.
Man, if I had a sunroom, my mental health would go up at least 1 point.
I absolutely love this room on this house, man. Like, it faces south. I get sun for 3/4 of the day. And today just happens to be really nice out. And it's just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing, with Sean in the sunroom. The hell,
Yeah, of course.
I really like how you do stuff, man. Like otherwise I wouldn't even have agreed to do this, because I really like how you let the caller take it wherever it goes is where it goes, and you're cool with that. And that's one of the things that really drew me to even responding to you. So
I appreciate that. Also, the fact that you are here, and I know you have some ongoing sleep things. Yeah,
I've struggled with sleep. Like it's probably the biggest challenge I have in my life, and it's continuing from my time doing shift work in law enforcement. I've battled and struggled with sleep, and I continue to do so. And one morning, it's another countless night where I'm staring at the ceiling, got up and I walked to the bathroom, and I'm like exhausted, mentally, physically, hadn't slept in, like, this was like the third, fourth night in a row. Yeah. Like zero sleep. And I'm staring at myself in the mirror. Like, it was weird. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. And I just found myself staring in the mirror, right in my own, trying to bore into my own soul. This voice come out. It just said, dude, you're fucking done, man. And it kind of struck me as, what do you mean? What do you mean done? Because since I was a young kid, I'm the kind of guy that like freaking works hard. I'm committed. I'm dedicated. I'm disciplined. I put the freaking work in. I'm not afraid of getting hurt or dirty or none of that stuff. So the whole like, you're done thing, it struck me. What is this? And what kind of voice is this? Like, I'm not talking anything schizophrenic. I'm just talking about that inner voice that I think we all have as consciousness or whatever the hell it is. And it just said, dude, you're done. Holy shit. I spent like 20 minutes looking at myself in the mirror, which in itself is weird. Like, who is this guy in the mirror? And then I just sat down on the couch. It's the middle of the night. And I could just feel all the drive, whatever it takes to get on with your day. It just drained out of me. It was just like, you know what? Fuck it, man. Like, I am freaking wiped out. Like, there's a long history of what brought me to that mirror. And so this was about 2 months ago. Like, in your podcast, you say, well, where do you want to start? I'm kind of starting at the end.
And one of the things you wrote in the email, or it might have been the email in response to my response, was one of the episodes that struck you was actually mine, in that I was telling a story. My best friend, who, like you, was also, I believe, he was a police officer. Were you a police officer?
I was, yes. Front line.
Front line, man. My friend was in New York City working in the projects. That's hard shit.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, you're jogging my memory. That's exactly why I chose to email you. Is like, oh man, this guy had a freaking friend, if not best friend, that took himself out. And I'm just like, oh shit, I got to email this Sean guy. Like, oh yeah, shit.
And that was years ago. New York City at the time was transitioning a little bit. It was still kind of old school. You know, I don't want to say anything offensive, but I know for sure that his career would have been in jeopardy if he had chosen to get some help. That's what I've learned. I don't know if it's true. I just know that's what I've learned about it.
No question.
Anyway, that's a whole other fucking long conversation and maybe even podcast. But one of the things that you shared with me was that there are so few people you've heard in some language around the idea that I haven't talked to many people, if maybe only a couple, who were in law enforcement.
That's why I'm sitting with you right now, Sean. When I had that moment a few months ago, and I started thinking to myself, like, am I like pushed to the edge here? What does done mean? And so I started getting curious about, what does it take for other people to be done, pushed over the edge? And that's what got me researching suicide. I was like, well, I don't really know what to enter in the search engine here, but I think it's kind of like suicide. Well, I think that's what the voice meant when it said you're done. It's just like, you know what? You're done. It didn't take long for your podcast to come up. What's this all about? I was curious. All right. I clicked on it and started, there's stories about people who have attempted and failed or not. And I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Like, what takes people to that? And am I in that ballpark? I was very, very curious. I listened to probably half a dozen episodes back to back to back. And what I really liked, how varied they were in demographic, guys and gals from different ages and backgrounds. And as I got listening to more and more of them, I was like, oh, okay. So it took that person have that happen in their life. Some people have been kind of on the edge their whole life. Others not so much. And it was like, and I started relating to a few of these stories about, life and it's what happens. And it dawned on me after about a couple hours. I'm like, wait a minute. Emergency services is not equally represented in this podcast.
Yeah, no. You are absolutely right.
And that's when I stumbled upon your episode with you and your friend. And it's like, well, I don't know, got to bring more focus on that particular topic because I know for sure that it's a thing. Police, fire, ambulance, the big three.
Right.
And I don't care what country or if you're a freaking New York cop or a freaking Royal Canadian Mounted Police like me. Policing's policing on the front line. And so is fire and ambulance. And that's what struck me. I started thumbing and scrolling through episodes and just clicking on the name. And I really like your format of how you have the little sound clip.
Thank you. Yes.
I think that's fantastic, man, because I click on that and then you get like a 15, 20-second little blurb of kind of what the episode's going to be like. And I started clicking on a few, like looking for police, fire, ambulance. Like, where are these guys?
Underrepresented is an understatement. It is absolutely true. You know why there are more women who are on the podcast? It's probably about 70% on this podcast because men don't fucking talk.
There you go.
You know why there's almost no frontliners? Probably you'll tell me why. Because I'm guessing they don't talk. They have a certain disposition. Sometimes there might be consequences, this and this and that. And we'll hear you, and you represent in part all of those people. That's fucking why, though. But I would fucking love to talk to people who are simply not here very often.
Yeah.
With cops in particular, how do they try to end their lives?
The phrase that you used is, as I pointed out in that email, they eat their gun.
They eat their gun. So, yes, some of them don't work, but more times than not, especially if you know how to use a gun, you're dead. So they can't talk with me, even if they wanted to.
Exactly. They're very, very successful.
Yeah.
They don't attempt. They succeed.
And look, I'll never know what happened in the locker room of Ravenswood Precinct exactly. I only know from, I don't know, some stupid fucking article in the newspaper that was 90% wrong, but he put the gun in his mouth, man. Like, he knows what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine my hope is that it was, instant, and it probably was.
I've been to many, many scenes where that's been the method of choice, and it's instant.
I am one of the questions I want to ask you is I'm really curious about what it's like to be around. Now, you're around a lot of shit as a police officer, but given the nature of this podcast,
Sean, if I can clarify just for I've been retired from policing for 11 years now. It's no longer part of my life. I don't hang out with cops. I don't talk shop.
But you remember dealing with suicides.
Oh, absolutely.
And given what we're talking about, that will be a question I ask about.
Okay.
Because a lot of people don't come upon things where they see a dead person who took their any dead person, but with the fucking noose around their neck and they're hanging or whatever. And we don't need to get super graphic because it doesn't help anything here. But
no.
What is, I'm going to ask you about it. I want to go back first, but what is that like? Because again, I haven't had the opportunity to ask that kind of question to many people. You had said earlier that you were wondering, am I in the ballpark of some of the people you're hearing on the podcast? My question for you is, are you, as we speak, in the ballpark?
Similarly, with the number of your guests, not so much with others. I've never had a lifetime of despair. The whole ideation thing is pretty new to me. I'm 54 years old, retired from policing 11 years ago. I've got some miles under my belt. I've noticed that a lot of your guests, not so much, but I don't judge these people. I'm like, hey, you can be in different states of mind at 20. I have no doubt, but that's not where I come from.
Right. When I ask you if you're in the ballpark, what I'm asking you is essentially, as we speak, and this was only 2 months ago, this incident in the bathroom, but the ongoing everything else, sleep, and you're probably unearthing other shit. Are you suicidal?
No, I'm not, but it's creeping in, man. It's starting to become more and more in the forefront. I'm thinking more about it. The last 2 months have been brutal. I've told two of my really close friends. I'm like, man, it feels like my brain has flatlined. Things that used to like bring me joy and pleasure, nothing. There's like no happiness register up here anymore. I'm getting through the day and the days just feel like they're dark. So to answer your question, no, I don't feel like, oh, you know what? I think I'm just going to check out. But it feels like that's kind of creeping into my future. It does feel like that.
Yeah.
Again, if I'm to recall kind of my life story, it would make more sense, because up until this point, it's just been what's this retired cop dude like went into the bathroom, and well, there's a lot of history there. And the biggest thing is a recent divorce, like a recent ending of a relationship that absolutely floored me. Like, I think it was like the next level of despair when that relationship came apart. It was like, holy shit, serious. That was a year and a half ago that my wife and I split physically, and it's been a year and a half of absolute hell. And I think that moment in the bathroom staring at myself was like a moment of, all right, man, it's been a year and a half of freaking brutal, emotional turmoil, despair, call it what you will, led to that moment. However, having said that, my career in law enforcement was very damaging to me psychologically, emotionally. Not so much physically. Took a few punches in the head, but physically, whatever. Sure. I can live with that. But my career on the front line, when I reflect back on it, I'm just like, holy shit. At the time, of course, you don't really notice it.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
I was only 23 years old when I was a cop. What do you know at 23? You don't know shit from nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm going and dealing with people's domestic problems and violence. I remember the first call I went to that involved someone with mental health issues. It was very early in my service. I was still 23 years old. I think about that now, like 23 is a kid, and I may have been a little more mature for my age than, say, the average, but still, I come from kind of a middle class background. I was never really subjected to violence in my life.
Yeah.
And to be thrown into it like, all right, you now do this for a living. Guess what? And I remember my first call dealing with someone with a mental health issue. My first thought was, why the hell are the police involved?
Oh, man, don't get me started, my friend.
I know. And that's the thing. And I've heard so many terrible stories from your listeners and your guests of the experiences they've had with the police and in their involvement. Just like, oh God, I feel so bad for these people because I was on the other side of that many, many, many times.
Yeah.
And it really shook me to the core.
I don't know how it was for you, but in general, police are wholly unequipped and untrained to deal with a lot of those situations, period. They just resort to what they know. That's often a problem in those cases. Not always, but often, right? So, yeah. Right. Imagine when you were breaking down in your bathroom and someone was concerned and they busted in and handcuffed you. You're like, what the fuck? I'm not ripping on you or the police, by the way. I'm not. I'm just saying they're not trained and there's a lack of awareness on the top. Not you.
I will never defend police. I have nothing to do with them anymore. I will not defend the actions of the police. There's been many times where it's like, holy shit, I feel like ashamed that I was even an agent of the government. The things that I had to do in the name of law enforcement. So many times, man, like, it's called law enforcement. It's not called opinion enforcement. Like, so many times I had to do things I didn't agree with.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
As a human, as a person in uniform, and that's what is so easy to overlook is like, that guy or gal wearing the freaking uniform, actually, believe it or not, that's a human. And again, back to like one of my first experiences dealing with people with mental health issues and thinking, why are the police called? Well, this person is having an episode, whatever you want to, in their neighbor's backyard. They've unclothed themselves, or swinging on their kid's swing. Mm-hmm. And the neighbor phoned, yeah, my neighbor is like crazy and you got to come and get them out of here. Well, how do you deal with that as a 23-year-old? Like, okay,
I hope you weren't alone. Yeah, fuck.
I was completely alone because in the mounted police, in the RCMP, it's rural policing for the most part. And you always, like, not always, but many, many, many times respond solo. That's a completely different ballgame.
Completely different ball.
You have to have a lot of good, solid judgment to sort out a situation by yourself. And I remember going to that call. There's this woman in her mid-40s on the neighbor's swing set, naked. My instructions, it's pretty simple. She needs to go to the hospital. And all these horror stories about hospitals. I can confirm that because I've taken people to those places against their will. It is so unfun. That's the right word. And so I go up to her and in my head, I'm thinking, you know what? This person, she deserves the most compassion that you can possibly give, because look at this situation. Like, what does it take to get to that? And I try and talk and be as gentle and calming as I can. And she's not having anything to do with it. And so there comes a point, well, I'm going to have to physically take hold of this person. And I don't want to. I don't want to at all. I would just like her to say, you know what? Okay, let's go, Mr. Nice Policeman. I would have loved that.
Sure.
Nope. So I take one hold, and I'm telling you, man, she went from fairly docile. It was an absolute crazy fight. And I knew that was a potential outcome. But I'm telling you, I was not expecting a full-blown cage match freaking fight.
Right.
Like, holy shit. It's just an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And all the while I'm thinking in my head, I can't believe what I'm doing. They said nothing about this in training.
Yeah, they usually don't talk about that stuff. But if you add that shit up over 30 years or 20 years, whether you realize it or not, that fucks with someone. And by the way, it's interesting you were saying 23 and I don't know shit, but yet at the same time you were saying, our memories are funny. So I don't know if this is how you were at 23 or now reflecting back. The fact that you thought what she needs more than anything else is compassion you knew something at 23, clearly.
Sean, I've always been a sensitive person. I don't want to throw the word empath around because I'm not an empath. However, there were a lot of times when I responded to calls where I felt so bad for the people that I had to like many, many times going home after shift, not able to sleep because I'm thinking about these people and the terrible situations they're in. And my God, what would I like? And I knew that there was one time where I knew I was more sensitive than I should be. This was a few years in my career. Reality was starting to really hit me like, holy shit, I've been exposed to the real world quite a bit now. Like, in terms of what I was doing on the job and the violence. And about 5 or 7 years into my career, get a call, somebody hit a deer on the highway. And we got these calls all the time. I'm like, okay, all right. So I go out and, no problem. Nobody hurt and minor accident. I go out and I'm kneeling by this deer and it's alive still. And I just felt overwhelmed with emotion. Pull up my sidearm and I'm like talking to this deer. You know what? I hate to do this to you. And boom, 9mm in the head from point blank. And I just had like this minor little breakdown. I started crying on the side of the highway about this innocent creature that I had to like kill. And I caught myself like, Miles, dude, you better get a grip, man. Like, you better freaking get a hold of it. And I kind of knew at that point, I think shit's building up.
When was that?
I think mid-late 90s.
The impulse makes complete sense to me. Get a grip, get a hold of yourself. I mean, you've got work to do.
Yeah.
But you cannot do that thing. For most people, there are, I'm sure, exceptions. If you just white knuckle it that way and get a grip and get a hold and you just get on with it because you have your work and other shit in your life. At the time, you might have been married, right? You were married for quite some time. Most people break. I don't know if that's right. Maybe someone will email me, but like, actually, only 33% of people break. I don't fucking know. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And you thought, and you were thinking back then more than 20 years ago now? Is that right? That's when it might have, not that moment necessarily, but like, you're not the same guy.
I knew that emotions were starting to pile up in my head because I'm crying on the side of the highway about putting a deer down. Something's not right here. Like, and I kind of knew at that point, I think there's a backlog of emotions going on in my head. And I pushed it down. I just like, man, you cannot, what are you going to show up to the next call freaking crying? Like, seriously, that is a pivotal moment. That was a moment of self-reflection that I knew psychologically, mentally, emotionally, something was backing up. And then I needed a release. I took 2 minutes to freaking literally cry on the side of the highway. All the shit you've seen and dealt with that you never showed any emotion. I think that was a bit of a release just now. Like I knew that. Again, I was in my mid-late 20s at that point, so I had a little more life under my belt. But
were you married then?
No.
Would your friends or colleagues,
would they have seen any difference?
Not one bit. And I made sure of that.
All right.
Because to show any kind of like any looseness in the armor, you just can't. Not in that line of work.
What happens if you do?
Oh, like if I would have came in and told one of my colleagues, you know what, guys, I just had a crying episode on the side of the highway. Maybe their first response would have been, well, shit, well, what happened? But in their head, they would have been thinking, can I rely on this guy in a gunfight? Like, can I rely on this guy when the shit really hits? He's crying over a deer. Can I count on him when the shit hits the fan? And it was absolutely paramount to me in my career that all my colleagues knew if shit gets real, I'm there.
Do you think there's a connection between somebody who's crying, let's say use the example you gave, and not being reliable in a gunfight?
Man, that's a question. Obviously not, Sean, because I was the most reliable guy when shit hit the fan that there will ever. I was the first guy through the door. I was the guy willing to always. So clearly having that moment on the side of the highway did not affect my ability to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I don't know, how would colleagues feel?
We're not talking about you crying 18 hours a day nonstop. It's a little different.
Right.
No judgments. That's a little different, right? So you wouldn't be able to be there because you're crying and you literally couldn't hold a gun steadily.
There's no space allowed for emotions. Like there just isn't. Like sitting around the coffee table with the boys and gals. I worked with lots of female cops too. Most of them were tough as nails. And if you sat around like, you know what? Well, I had a little crying episode on the highway the other day. It would be freaking cricket silence. What happened?
What's interesting is that some of the people in that room had a similar experience, but they're not talking about it either.
I was just about to say, truth be known, people in that room would have probably been, holy shit, I cried last month after I ran over a whatever, like some sort of minor thing that kind of pushed them to that emotional ledge.
But then in some cases, you're dealing with your job being jeopardized. So of course you're not going to talk. Like that's your livelihood.
Absolutely.
Your identity for some people. Like, come on.
Yeah.
You'd actually be really kind of dumb to talk.
Exactly. Like if the boss would have caught wind that, wait a minute, one of my guys is on the side of the highway and has this mini breakdown. Yeah, I need to talk to you in my office.
Right.
What's going on? Well, nothing. What do you mean nothing? Okay, I'm going to make an appointment with the force psychologist. And I'll be, oh, fuck, really? An appointment with the force psychologist is like, oh, frick, that's a fast track to getting your ass into a situation.
Is that right?
Well, because now I got to lie. I do not want to lie. I hate lying. And when I have to lie to protect my ass, my job and my career and my standing with my colleagues, which was the most important thing, thankfully it never came to that.
That's what's tricky about it, because it's a psychologist within that agency or whatever we're calling it, as opposed to me going to a psychologist privately in an office somewhere and it just stays between us unless it's really extreme. They let at least one person know about your meeting.
Yeah.
So then that changes everything. You don't have confidential.
I don't know what it's like now. I don't know if it's changed in 11 years. Probably not. I don't know.
Given what you've shared thus far, I am guessing your, like, say, childhood was kind of normalish.
It was mostly okay. Yeah.
You don't look back and think that was a moment when I was 7 years old with my mom that led me to.
No. And that's kind of what I was thinking that I could bring to your podcast and your listeners is a little different perspective. Okay, well, here's a dude that was a cop for 20 years on the front line. Wonder what that was like. Why is he having a moment in front of the mirror 11 years after retiring? That's different.
I don't know how many, I'm going to say middle-aged men. It could be women, it could be older, younger, but because that's what we are. And that's what I've talked to, for lack of a better, men like us. I wasn't a cop, so I use that very loosely. But I think it's interesting even to zoom out more beyond being someone who served on the front line. There are a lot of men, a lot, probably skewing even more in rural areas. At least that's, I think in like out west, all areas. They hit an age, they find themselves either in a miserable relationship or alone, compromised relationships elsewhere with maybe family or friends for whatever the reasons are. They're living an isolated life. There's loneliness creeping in. There's drugs or alcohol because, hey, you cope, you deal, you got to get through the fucking day, or you need to sleep. Maybe you have firearms, and it just starts to be, and then you're looking at the mirror.
Exactly. Yes. This is marriage number 2 for me, man. I grew up as a kid and I remember being in my teenage years and I was convinced beyond any belief I was going to be a family man. I was going to be a one married freaking dude for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to be an excellent father. That's who I am. Okay, well, fast forward freaking 40 years, 35 years, second divorce. I don't have any kids. That never happened because my relationships through the years have been absolute freaking disasters. And here I am, newly freaking single, alone. I'm renting a freaking room at my buddy's house. Like, that's cool. It's 18. Not so much at 54. Like, this is part of why I stared in the mirror. Holy fuck, man. Like, here you are. Like, again, this last divorce is kind of like the straw that broke. Like, it was just like, I can't believe it. I cannot believe it.
Yeah. And when you say that, you're not using the like colloquial way we say, I can't believe it. You're literally saying, I cannot believe this is my life.
Like, my brain, it's not computing. I'm not making the connections in my head.
Nodding my head. I'm like, because I'm like, there's a lot of differences, but I'm like nodding my head because I'm like, I get that. This is not the script.
Never.
This was never part of the fucking script. And not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And it's not from a lack of hard work. That's one of the things that gets me is like, because I self-reflect a lot, right? Like I'm a very hard critically. I'm just, okay, what'd you do, man? Where'd you screw up? What's the deal? And I'm like, okay, you did that. Like, you worked. Wow, did you work hard? Made a lot of mistakes. Obviously, made a shit ton of mistakes along the way to end up, like I said, in this situation like, holy shit, I just don't have the energy and the drive and the motivation to pick it all up again. And
I know it might be too soon, or maybe it's going to be never. Have you tried to date?
Yeah, I've done that in the last couple months. And I'm telling you, man, the coffees are one thing, and I can do that. I'm pretty good socially. Like, I'm fairly adept at what it takes to have a back and forth. The sex thing, I felt so fucking guilty afterwards that it was devastating, freaking devastating to me. My wife and I, we split 18 months, and I still have all kinds of baggage about my marriage, my soon-to-be ex-wife, what that means. So, yeah, to answer your question, been down there. And I can't say I like it a whole lot. Such a hit to my sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
I've been a homeowner since I was 23. That whole thing of owning a home and doing the whole investing and preparing and the money and the freaking having it all lined up fucking exploded 2 years ago, man. Oh, I don't need to go into what a divorce is. The money, just like $100 bills are just on fire. Just left vacant emotionally, spiritually, financially. That's one thing at 34. At 54, I'm just like, fuck, I don't think I got it in me to rebuild, man.
Yeah.
A couple things that I think are important in my story. I responded to a call one time, and it was a domestic. The guy was literally feeding fists to his girlfriend when I got there. So that's the level we're at, right? So immediate interdiction is required.
Yeah.
So the fight is on between me and him, and he's going for my gun. He's trying to get my gun. And I know this is life or death. You're fighting for your life here.
How do you guys, sorry, I don't know how you don't have backup. And it's like, what the fuck?
It's changed now, Sean, like, because there's been this issue, this kind of issue has been raised before. Like, how in the hell do you respond to a call like that by yourself?
Even in war, and I don't know a lot about war, but like, you're not usually, probably sometimes, but not usually doing things alone.
Well, I have friends that are ex-military, and they tell me repeatedly what you did was way fucking harder and way more dangerous than we ever did. Because they would say, we knew we were going into a firefight. We had our buddies. We were all armed and ready to shoot. So back to this call. Yeah. So I show up police guard, get out. And I can hear them fighting. I can hear the screaming and yelling and fighting. So there's no time. You respond now. There's no time to figure out what the hell and get back up. And no. Up the stairs, through into the kitchen where there's weapons galore in the kitchen. There's a knife. So the whole point is, I know this is extreme risk. He's my size. He's a scrapper. Like I might not win this one. So the fight is on and I'm wrestling and I happen to get him in handcuffs through sheer freaking determination. What do you think happens? She comes up behind me and nails me over the back of the head with a freaking pot. And I'm telling you, man, my world went dark. And I knew that if I lose consciousness, I'm dead.
Really?
Yeah, I knew that he or her would get my sidearm and shoot me. That's how serious this was. So I was fighting for consciousness. My vision was like this, like dark, fought through it. And I have to wrestle her with one arm and him with the other. It's an unbelievable situation.
Right.
And the reason this is kind of relevant for a couple reasons. One, I know I suffered a freaking concussion from that. It was a cast iron pot that she whaled me over the back of the head with. And the next day I had a headache from hell, vomiting, dizziness, the whole freaking concussion thing. No question. I had a brain injury from that.
Right.
But secondly, I found out later she had quite a string of mental health issues that I didn't have time to get into when I was responding to that call.
Right.
Like I didn't have time to go through the freaking paperwork. As weird as this sounds, computer information was still kind of like it wasn't 100%.
That's fascinating. Right now, today, on your phone, you could click a few buttons and get her history. I don't know if that's always a good thing because you might approach it in a way that, but it's data can be usually good. Information can be helpful.
Yeah. So I was exposed to a couple things. And when I found out her history, it was like, oh man, I would have loved to have known that 5 minutes before showing up because I would have never taken my eye off her. And so the whole point of that is the unpredictability of someone going through a mental health crisis. She looked like the most timid. Well, she was beat up. Her face was bloodied. Like she looked like the definitive victim in a domestic violence situation. And she was screaming, let him go, let him stop. It's very, very common for people to stay in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
It just is. So yeah, that happened. That was like in 1999.
You said the word unpredictability about not knowing or not having known.
Yes.
The image of that makes me think that like so much of your job, I don't know that how much, and I don't know, some of it's just hanging out in the station. I don't know how cops' lives really work that well, but I don't, for you, your job is unpredictable.
That's what makes it so hard mentally.
Right, exactly. So you never know how dangerous this is going to be. Even if it's not dangerous, you're on alert. That releases chemicals. You know what I mean?
Oh, do I know what you mean? Absolutely. I worked in Canada, again, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, they do rural policing, which is to say we are the guys that do native reserves. Now, I worked on, at that time, and it was around 2000 to 2005, statistically, it was the most violent detachment posting in the nation.
Wow.
Which is saying a lot. The reason that it's relevant in terms of our conversation is I had to cut down so many people that hung themselves on that reserve that I had to make sure I kept a sharp edge on my knife. I probably cut down 50 people, and a lot of those people were under 15.
Is that right?
Yep. Absolute epidemic. Lift them up by one arm and cut the extension cord or the rope or the whatever with the other. I don't know how many times you can do that without. That really sunk in to my head. Working on that reserve changed me as a person. Like I talked about being empathic before, flip side of that. Working that reserve, I became robotic. By the end of my tenure there, I could cut down a 14-year-old kid and go have a coffee 10 minutes later. It's just another day. There was violence that you see like television shows like Cops and freaking, that used to be on in the 90s and blah, blah. And I used to watch that show and be like, Yeah, all right. Inner city LA, yeah, it's pretty violent, but I know violence. The reserve could have its own TV channel of crazy shit that's going on. And so it changed me as a person. When I left there, I had no use at all for humanity. I couldn't care less like if you died or like I was numb. So I got posted to another small town, rural Saskatchewan, prairies of Canada. I was unhinged because I was so used to having to meet violence with violence, and if you didn't, like it was just so. It was a rough road for me. That last handful of years, I was getting in quite a bit of shit. I was getting in quite a bit of trouble, and I told my superiors because I remember because you have to go for a biannual medical, and in that medical, they introduced a form. It was like a mental health form, and I used to just like chuckle at it. I'm like,
it's so stupid.
Like, are you serious? Really? Like, have you ever felt whatever? Check the box 1 to 10. How's your mood today? It's always a fucking 1. Like, I got to the end of it. There was like 10 questions on your mental health, and I'm just like, well, of course that sucks. Look what I do for a living, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Fuck humanity, and look, check. And the last question: have you ever felt suicidal? I remember the box and thinking, oh, you check yes to that, say goodbye to your career.
But you never were suicidal.
I never was suicidal. In my entire service as a police officer, I was never suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Depression, lots of it. Anxiety near the end of my service, lots of it. And those are the two that are always playing together, right?
What does it look like or feel like for you dealing with, it sounds like self-diagnosed depression or anxiety? Does that mean you're not sleeping? Does that mean you're in bed all day? No, because I know you're not allowed to do that. Is that right? Does that mean that you're fighting, drinking, doing drugs? Like, what does it look like and how are you coping?
It starts again, and I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Like when I left the reserve, my opinion of the human race, as crazy as that's, like it was very, these humans, I don't know, like they suck. My whole mindset was so negatively planted. Oh, it was brutal. Like okay, so what did depression look like? My days off, lots of days off in bed, man. Like I just couldn't get out of bed. It's like, fuck this. Like, oh, I just can't. Like, I just can't. Like when that started being quite commonplace, my relationship at the time suggested, you should maybe see somebody. I was like, fuck that. Like, I don't need to. What do you mean see somebody? What? Am I going to go to some psychologist? Like, fuck, whatever. No. And so depression for me at that time was, I was super irritable. Don't get me in traffic, man, because I'm going to freaking lose it. In bed, hardly sleeping, but can't get out of bed. I never had suicidal thoughts, but I had lots of thoughts of, I don't want to see people. I can't be in crowds. Like, don't put me in a room full of people. No way. There's no way.
Drinking?
That's actually a good point. Like I started drinking when I was working the reserve. I was single then, and I would get home after a night shift, and I would be like 8 a.m, sun's up. I'm like, I can't freaking sleep, man. I'm just like, I just finished being in a fight like 2 hours. Like I can't. Maybe if I take a big freaking pull off this vodka bottle, maybe it'll knock me out. Like at this point, anything. Okay, into the booze cabinet. Let's try this. I don't need that cap anymore. But it was just like, okay, take a good pull. Like, don't just sip. Like, give that a few minutes. Oh, all right, that's taking the edge off. I feel kind of like a human. Feel pretty reasonable. All right, go lay down. That's kind of helpful. Sure shit, I'm doing that the next day. One good pull isn't doing it anymore. It's got to be now 2. And now I'm staying up half an hour and finishing off a third of a bottle. Like, it didn't take long. I think I peaked out at a 26 ounce a day. Really? You know where this ends. Like, this ends with you taking your life or being drunk at work, or like, this does not end well.
Here's my image, and not to be like, I don't mean to add hyperbole or, here's my image. You're this dude, you're alone a lot, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff you're seeing and physically involved with, and all kinds of stuff at work. You're drinking some. You obviously have a gun that you can, I don't know how it is there. You take your gun with you wherever you go. You don't have to leave it somewhere.
Right, because I was on call.
So you have a gun, maybe more. Yeah. There's a lot of boxes you're checking there. Yeah, this is when people start to go on a really fucking dangerous path. And some of them I'll never talk to because they are dead.
Yeah.
And if there's a category of people that applies to, I would, without knowing the data, I would be very confident saying top 3 are cops.
Yeah.
Or at least first responders, frontline people. But I would actually say cops more than them.
I think so. I would think so.
Because you have a gun.
Yeah.
And I know firemen don't go into fires alone. That's a huge thing. You start to add it all together and you're like, and excuse me if this is all weird or of course cops are going to be killing themselves. There's just too many things that you're dealing with. It's tragic, but it's fucking obviously true. No?
Dude, if you're weird, I'm weird.
Like when I'm talking to you now, I'm kind of surprised you're alive. I realized you didn't have these sort of explicit suicidal thoughts until more recently, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just putting myself in your shoes knowing I would never be able to handle that. People are built a little differently. You did it. There was some, let's say, fallout from that. You're not the same person.
No, not at all.
If I had to guess, I'm saying that's part of the reason that your relationships were struggling.
Not part, huge part. Like the whole reason why I have a whole wake of failed relationships behind me is because what I did for a living, how it affected me, how I responded. You think a partner's going to be cool with you pounding a third of a vodka? Like, no. And of course there's there's anger issues and I'm doing shit that's I can't believe I'm doing. I don't blame any of my ex freaking relationships for leaving. Not one. That kind of thing is kind of a brutal reality check.
I can't imagine anything being more of a reality check than that.
Yeah. And so I've spent the last 11 years trying to heal from my career. And again, because I think going in, I was more empathic and sensitive. Like I'm not an A-type. Cops, they step into an environment, they take charge, they're loud, they freaking tell you what to do, they blah, blah, blah. That's not me. I'm more of a C or a D type.
You're more of the second in command, the capo. Great at taking orders. You're a leader, but you're not necessarily needing to be like the loudest one.
No.
Like you're the enforcer, kind of.
Exactly. And there was a time where I was in charge and I had six guys under me and I was in charge of that for a while we got our new boss. And I adapted quite well to that role. Well, a guy that worked under me that I was supervising, he killed himself, drove his freaking car into a concrete barrier.
That's a fucking interesting way to take yourself.
Isn't it? And everyone was like, holy shit, really? And I second guessed myself. I don't know how many times, like, could you not see that coming? Could you not see that coming? He was the most pleasantly delightful guy, socially very, there was no indication. And then he killed himself one day. I supervised him, frickin' stuck. No
indication.
I wasn't getting any indication. He would submit reports to me that I would have to review. And I don't know if this is relevant or whatever. It seems stupid to me, but I would review his stuff and there was always spelling mistakes. And again, this may sound stupid at first glance, but maybe there's something to this. I would correct him. And I'd be like, you know what, man, there's a spell check on the computer. I remember after about the 5th or 6th time, I called him into my office. And I'm like, this is unacceptable. You really need to pay more attention. And I was kind of like dropping the hammer a bit. It seems like stupid to me now. We're talking about spelling mistakes in a written, like a police report. It's like, it means nothing to me now. Well, it did then. And it wasn't long after. And I know it can't be related. I'm sure it's not related, but I don't know where his headspace was. Like when I think about him, like, man, he could have had 1,000 things in his personal life on the go that I had no concept of. That was kind of a wake up call to me about, okay, in my little world as a supervisor, making sure a police report was properly grammatically correct and the spell, that was important in my world. And then to have reality slap you in the face so hard. Whoa.
Not that he took a leave. He killed himself.
Yeah.
It just reminds me that when you're struggling, it affects potentially every single thing in your life. So for some people, yeah, among other things, that might be spelling errors, lack of attention to detail, because the brain isn't fucking functioning that way. It doesn't matter what they try to do. It's like, it's just fascinating to me. The brain is a mysterious thing. And if it's not functioning in a certain way, it will not matter what people around them say they should do.
No.
I don't know. There's plenty of metaphors I can use that are escaping me or analogies,
Yeah.
but it's like asking someone to drive that doesn't know how to drive. Like, do you understand? I can't fucking drive.
He was probably thinking, why can't I do this?
Yeah, of course there was no fucking indication. If he indicated anything, he might have lost his job. Maybe. You pointed out why you didn't indicate hard things. So why would he be different? Even though you were in charge then, still doesn't matter. Like, that's the system you're in, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
My friend who killed himself, there was very little indication by everyone you talked to. Years go by, you look back, maybe a couple years leading up. Was he more down? Okay, yeah, I could see that. Upon reflection.
Yeah.
Did he smile a little less? Yeah, but like at the time, I'm like, you're working a lot. You're not sleeping that well. You're having problems with your girlfriend. Why would you be smiling a lot?
Exactly, yeah.
And he worked in a line of work then and there where I don't know if he would have gotten help, even if it was available and there was no potential problems associated with it. Now it's like almost standard and expected that people have a therapist. It wasn't that way 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30.
And I recognize in myself that, okay, I'm not who I used to be, and this job is negatively impacting my emotional health. And I knew that, okay, this whole policing thing, I got to be done with this. And in the RCMP, you need 20 years in to retire early. Okay, you take a penalty, but I was like, okay, make it to 20, get out of this line of work, and you'll be fine. Absolutely convinced of that. So I make it to 20, I get out, and I get another job. I'm in the oil and gas sector in Western Canada, making almost 3 times the money I ever did as a cop. So, hey, I'm out of that line of work. I'm in the heavy construction business now. I'm driving a big rig. Wouldn't you know, that's when my freaking symptoms start showing up. PTSD. I don't like having letters attached to me. And I get it. There's people that feel that, I've been diagnosed this, at least that gives it a name. I totally get that. That's not me.
Right.
I'm resistant to letters. Job was very difficult. All kinds of things went wrong on the job. And I went back to my employer, who I was working for, and I kind of had it wasn't a breakdown. I had a face-to-face discussion with my supervisor. I said, look, I can't work in the foothills anymore. Can't do it. And he said, half of our work is in the foothill. Like, what do you mean? And so we had like an hour and a half long discussion. I thought I got through, and I was on days off, and I was in my truck on the way home, and he phones me. Yeah. Okay. I got another job for you. I was like an hour down the road. And so I'm like, yeah, well, it's in the foothills. And I said, well, I just told you I can't. And I was in such a fucked headspace. And I told him in the meeting, I will quit on the spot if you send me west, like in the foothills. It was that desperate. I ended up having to quit that job, man. And I ended up having to quit that because my mind's.
I'm going to throw out a word here that's some people don't like to ascribe to themselves. It feels a little soft. I am always wary of me. It's like, I'm not diagnosing anything. That shit that you did, that is fucking self-care, bro. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. It just sucks that self-care was so devastating. I actually thought I was losing my mind. Like, what was that? So now one of my symptoms, and I hate, like, I was diagnosed. Well, you're freaking, yeah, okay, fine. It was freaking terrifying. And that's one thing that I've really learned and grown, I would say in the last 5, 6, maybe even 10 years, is like when I see somebody, homeless guy on the corner, you just don't know what kind of day someone's having. A simpler example, whatever, you're in line at the bank and someone's being a freaking asshole. Okay, well, maybe their kid just freaking died. My tolerance for people having moments in the world is so huge now. I am so forgiving of people's behaviors. You have no freaking clue what that dude just happened to him. No clue. In my younger days, I'd be like, well, what an asshole, what a jerk, whatever, fill in the blank. Not now. Maybe that's just maturity and it comes with age. And it'd be nicer.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing just sounds like straight up empathy.
Yeah. Because that has definitely come back to me since I've retired. When I mentioned before how that was vacant after I got off the reserve, how I really lost that. Well, that's come back, thankfully. In fact, it's come back quite strong. Like, I'm a softie, man. Like, I'm walking down the street, a guy would be like, and he'd be like, can you spare some change, man? I'm not going to buy booze. And here's $10. You know what? If I was you, I'd probably buy a freaking bottle.
If I give them money, you're free to do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say only, but you can only buy certain kind of food. Like if what you need is alcohol or drugs, like I'm giving you money to help your life out and you get to decide how you want to use it. I don't care if it's legal or not.
I don't know. It makes me feel good. I don't know why exactly, but because I relate to these people. Like as it stands right now, like I don't feel that far removed from these guys. One more freaking shitty strike and like it's like life can be very freaking challenging.
You're in some ways your safety net is getting, a little too thin.
Like currently, like I'm drinking too much. I know that. Like I still, that's my go-to. Thankfully, like when I consume alcohol, it mellows me. Like if anything, when I have a few drinks, my headspace goes to, you know what, dude, you better not get into a confrontation because you're really vulnerable right now. I'm the opposite of a violent freaking drinker, which is helpful. But I know it's just like, you know what? You think this is a solution? No, it's very, very temporary. It's very short term.
Yeah. In my experience, it's kind of hard to have empathy or at least practice it outwardly, consistently when you're not getting a lot of sleep, when you're really stressed at your job, when your relationship is compromised, when you might have money issue, all those things. Guess what takes a backseat is like me being super forgiving or open. Not always. Some people have they can pull it off, but a lot of people, they need the bandwidth to do that shit. And if you're living a certain life, that is not uncommon, that we work so much that we don't sleep enough. Like we eat like shit. All of this adds up and you're like, of course this person's going to be a present as an asshole. So 2-ish months ago, your relationship had been done, for lack of a better word, for well over a year at that point.
Yeah.
What is it? Is there something after you just woke up and it was just too much?
Well, I mean, dealing with lawyers is never a pleasant thing. November of 2022. Yeah, my wife made some allegations. I walked into my lawyer's office and this is like, again, that's never a pleasant experience and certainly always super expensive. She said, what happened last December? Nothing happened. Well, what do you mean? Well, take a listen to this. And she played me a message that my wife's lawyer sent to my lawyer. And it was my jaw hit the freaking floor, man. It was like the most accusatory. I don't know exactly what happened. It was like the most acute shit. I was accused of such things. And my lawyer looked at me and said, so like, is there any like substance to this? I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know what happened here, but I'm not that guy. And she goes, well, okay, we can work with that. But my advice to you is absolutely no contact.
Yeah.
And what is so strange about that, or one of the things, is a month prior to that, my wife and I went for lunch to discuss our divorce, and we were amicable. We actually had a few laughs. I guess we were agreeing to disagree. We were agreeing to part ways. And that was just a month prior. And that incident in my lawyer's office did something to me. Yeah, like it messed with my head. I left that meeting sick and in kind of a suspended reality of like, what the fuck is my world now? Now I'm a wife beater? Too much.
Do you think that came from your wife or her lawyers?
You know where I think it came from? Is my wife's psychologist. When she started seeing her own psychologist, and I don't know if it's the culture. You and I are mid-aged white dudes. We're evil by freaking default in the world. Probably preaching to the choir. In this day and age, there's something about being mid-aged and white male that we're the source of everything that's wrong in the world. I think the psychologist that my wife was seeing has slanted her in that direction. I honestly believe that. And was leading her down a path that was just like, you know what? Your husband's a male. Your husband's mid-age. Your husband's white. Of course he's evil. Like, he's an abuser. Anyway, man, it's just like things have gotten progressively worse for me ever since.
Okay.
In terms of my mental health, my ability to sleep is huge. If I get an hour a night, that's a pretty good night.
It's so interesting. I can never have a conversation like you're having if I got such little sleep. My body won't allow it. My brain won't allow it. It won't work.
I'm telling you, man, I was wondering if I was even going to be able to do this today.
How many people know that we're talking about this?
0.
Do you, as we speak, want to be alive?
Yes. As we speak, I want to desperately, I don't want to end it, man. Again, like coming back to what we started talking about, I'm starting to think about like this whole, like, I don't know, maybe, you got 54 good years in. That's not bad. Like I just don't have the energy for it. Like the whole thought of rebuilding a life literally from scratch is just like.
When's your birthday?
July.
So you're coming up on 55.
Yep. And to answer that question, I'm going to make that day.
Oh, you've listened to the podcast.
Of course I have, man. I wouldn't connect with you if I hadn't listened.
Right. I know. I hear you, man.
But if you were to bump that up to 60, now I'm starting to like,
yeah,
50-50 chance, maybe, like if things continue, like, like that's a different answer. Really, it is like.
Right. So, if you've listened to some more recent podcasts, ask this question about the pink and purple pill.
Yeah.
The safe way, and it's a painless way to go. Like, I'm almost sure, given what you shared, you ain't taking that.
Not right now, no.
But would you store it somewhere, maybe next to your gun or somewhere?
Yeah.
You wouldn't need your gun in that case, but you'd have two options.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you keep your gun loaded?
No, I used to.
Yeah.
When I lived out in the rural, I used to live in the country. I'm a strong believer in that we're all responsible for our own security.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very capable of that. I was never, I shouldn't say concerned, but I always knew I could confront someone invading my space. It wasn't because of any kind of self-harm thing. It was like, hey, I'm ready to freaking jump into action here. If someone kicks my door in, they're not going to have a good day. That's why the answer to that question is that's not the case anymore. Because I live in town now. Like, it's just not the same environment.
Did you ever seek medical help? Therapy, counseling?
Yeah, actually quite a bit.
Okay. When did that start? Because I know for a while that wasn't your jam.
2003.
Okay. So it's been a minute. Okay.
I had mentioned a partner I was with that said, hey, you know what? You might need. Well, I took her up on that. And I said, okay, I'm going to give this a whirl. That's when I started seeing a psychologist and my family doctor quite regularly. That's when I was prescribed meds. Mm-hmm. That's when I was diagnosed PTSD, which again, all of this came like rushing to me very quickly. I'm like, wait a minute. Meds now and like diagnosis, like, whoa. Like I was really trying to put the brakes on the whole. It seemed to really happen quickly. But then I started like, well, maybe there's something to it. So I agreed, like I took the meds and I've been on, I think 2003 to probably 12 solid years of meds and probably 4 different kinds. So it's not like I didn't give that an honest effort.
Yeah.
To try and deal mainly with the depression thing, because that remains in my life. Like, I think that's just now part of my makeup now. It's kind of a side effect of my work, but might be a little bit of disposition there genetically. My mom's kind of a bit of a neurotic person, so maybe there's some spillover there, but I'm not on anything anymore. Like, I quit that stuff because I was finding, I wasn't getting any benefit and the side effects were terrible.
Limp dick?
Oh, that was so demoralizing, man.
Can't even jerk off.
No. People might freaking chuckle at that as a joke. Oh, yeah. That's no fucking joke.
No, not at all.
Especially because my wife, she's a very sexual person. She likes that. She needs that. And here I am, like, fuck, you want to talk about knocking the freaking legs out from underneath?
It's like emasculation, man.
Yeah, big time. I have wondered if that played a role in our Like, I like to think no, but maybe, like, I'm not saying it's not out of that realm. That was a big side effect. I had other side effects, but that one was really serious. I'm kind of old school. I'm pretty sure in terms of, like, I'm a big believer in that as the male, I'm responsible for freaking security. My wife, like, that's my job.
Right.
Making sure that my family is safe. One job. 2, financial, providing, being a provider is huge. And sexually, like, that's part of my role as a male. Again, I emphasize that, like, it's no joke. Like, it's like, so that was a major player. And while I'm like, I'm going off these things, it's too little too late then. And I feel like being off those meds is the right choice for me. You know, again, I tried a number of different kinds, and that's never a fun road, as I'm sure many of your listeners will agree to. Is like, really, that's such throwing darts at a freaking board, right? Like, oh, try this. Yeah, takes 6 weeks to feel anything, but then try it for 6 months and come back to me. Fuck, really? I'm on the edge here. Like, I don't got 6. You know, you go and see a psychiatrist or a doctor or whatever that prescribed it, and it just seems like, you know, you're so flippant with that. You have no idea what you just said, what that means in my life.
This is a weird connection I'm making, but it's almost like how you were with over time with the suicides. It's like, it's just another suicide.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can imagine what goes through their heads. Like, frick, I got my own problems. Like, kill yourself. I had those thoughts on the job as a younger up. I responded to calls, be like, really?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, either do it or don't. Like, fuck, I got other shit to go to. Like, I got people fighting next. Like, I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the ugly reality of it.
If I asked you at 20, 30, 40, even 50, you'd be having a conversation with somebody on Zoom about edging close to suicide, would you have been like, what would you have said?
No, I wouldn't talk.
Would you think that at an early age you would ever be suicidal or close to it?
I'm wavering a bit. I had many times when I was working where I thought, you know what, if you get killed on the job, not so tragic. I had those thoughts more than once.
I don't know what that's called, but that's a thing.
I don't know what that's called either, but it's just like,
how many people know what you're going through?
Exactly what I'm going through? Probably none. I've got 2 close friends that are like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like, so I would say I've got 2. One's ex-military. He and I talk about shit that's like so real, it's ridiculous. You know, he's got similar things going on in his world too. So, but not many, man. Like, I don't like sharing this stuff to my friends and my family. It's just, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to bring this stuff into my.
And then what are they going to do with it?
What are they going to do with it? Exactly. What? Worry at best or do nothing at worst? Like, what? Come on. Nobody needs that.
Like, even if you were like, you know what, I am actually thinking about fucking going into the woods with my gun, you would share that with 1 or 2 of them?
Yeah, I actually would, which is saying quite a lot, actually, because that's something that's like, all of a sudden their world just changed, right? I think actually what would happen in my particular case is I would go to them long before I got to the whole, that's it, where's the frickin' ammo for the gun? I would be closer to that conversation way before then.
Are you at a point, or have you been, where you think about method, or is it a given that it's a gun?
I've given it some thought. Yeah, it'll be a firearm. Like, I'm not going to be a survivor. I'm not going to be, oh, I survived an attempt. No, like, I know how to do, like, I know how to make this happen. I know how to be a success at this. Like, I've seen lots. Yeah, there won't be any story about some attempt that didn't happen.
Does anything help you feel better?
Right now, it's pretty dark, Sean, to be honest with you. I would say, if anything, I do dab. Like, I am somewhat of a guitar player, and picking that up and just kind of picking it and listening, like, not any song in particular, but just running through the physical motion of it and listening to it can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm certainly no wizard on the thing, but I do know my way around it somewhat. So that's quite soothing is the word I'm going to kind of bring. Listening to your podcast has been, when I listen to the stories, what I'm trying to get out of them, again, and I touched on this originally, is like, I'm I find it helpful when my curiosity is piqued, because it kind of takes my brain in a different direction. Rather than like thinking of all my shit, I'm like, oh, what's that person's world like? And so it kind of pulls me off into a little different direction. So I like that. I like, again, the diversity of your listenership and your guests. I do like that too. I was like, well, what's some girl from Mexico going through? Well, that might be interesting. I have no idea what it's like to be a Mexican, and
Right.
So I like that.
Anything else help?
I like getting out for walks when it's nice out. I used to be very active physically and stuff, not so much anymore, but I have to be in the right kind of headspace for it. Like, it's not always helpful. Sometimes I'll go for a walk and I'm in my head too much. Damn it, I don't like that. Like, and that's when I'll tend to listen to a podcast or music or something. But So it's pretty basic stuff. It's nothing groundbreaking, and I'm sure it's something that's repeated a lot in your listenerships.
Is there anything about, and this could really be about anything you want, but in my mind, I go towards middle-aged man. Maybe it relates to your line of work that you were in, thinking about even a little bit about taking yourself out. Any of those things where you're like, that's fucking bullshit. I hear this and it's just not true.
I think, and this one's repeated a lot in your guess, but I guess I'm going to repeat it again. Is the whole concept of like, if you even think of this kind of thing, you're like a coward. And I'm like, wait a minute. To me, it takes a lot of courage to like reflect on what this is all about. And so many people are so considerate of their friends and family to the point where they won't, they've hesitated. Yeah, that's a chicken shit's way out. I'm like, I don't know. Have you ever had a gun in your mouth? Have you ever freaking had the finger on a trigger of a gun? Like, you think that's easy? I don't know. I think you have to be so like in such a desperate state that like it's certainly not cowardly. I don't get that. Maybe I'm thinking more like my demographic. Like, again, I've been around a few years. It's just like, I've lived life, taken a few hits and bumps and bruises along the way. Like, if my mindset's kind of going down that path, that doesn't strike me as cowardly.
When you were half your age, let's say in your, I don't know, whatever that number is, late 20s, did you think it was cowardly? Would you have used that word?
I don't think so. Obviously, I'm hesitant. I'm not 100% on that. When I think of what I was like at 26, 27, and again, I'm reflecting on us how responding to suicide calls, I always remember thinking, man, that person must have been pushed, well, literally over the edge. Like, I never thought, oh man, really? Like, oh, that was a chicken. Like, I was always, that must have been a rough freaking existence for someone to do that. I always thought that on the job when I was younger in my 20s. That was when I responded to calls of suicide. That was where my head was like, wow, that's drastic, man. That is over the edge stuff.
Yeah.
It sure is final.
You just said something about, have you ever had a gun in your mouth? Have you ever had a gun in your mouth?
No. And I don't say that with any kind of pride or like that I'm better than anybody. That's just the reality. I haven't, but
yeah. The thing that fucking flips me out about guns, it's so fast. Just to be clear, and I'm not like encouraging anything. I'm just wondering, from where you're sitting right now on your nice sun porch thing, how long would it take you to go inside, load your gun, pull the trigger, and kill yourself?
I could have it done in a minute, less. Done.
That's what's like flips me out. It's like,
and this whole room would be filled with my freaking debris.
I know you've been out of the force for a while, and you've even distanced yourself from that work. There might be some police officers or other law enforcement, first responders listening. Do you have anything to say to them?
Yeah, I do, actually. I never paid any attention to my mental health in my career. Not one bit. My physical health was freaking top shelf. I was training, weight training, running, cycling. I was in peak physical condition. Mental health, I never gave it 1 second thought. And yet that's the thing that I deal with it today. To reach out and speak to anyone in emergency services, I'm just like, guys, gals, pay some attention to this stuff. What's your brain doing? How are you sleeping? Are you irritable? Are you reacting out of the norm for you? If you are, pay attention to it. Like, everyone's going to be different in how to deal with this. Like, catchphrases, and I've heard it on your podcast too. Is this like, oh, just reach out and talk to people? Well, yeah, there's very few people that you can, but maybe you can find one or two in your world that you can sit down and be like, hey, you know what, Bob, I've been feeling like this. Like, how have you been? Like, how are you handling all these suicides we go to and cutting kids down from rafters? Like, how are you doing with that? Well, actually, I'm maybe drinking. Like, then these conversations can start maybe like that. I was hesitant to come on your podcast. Like, I was just like, well, I don't know. Like, then I thought, well, wait a minute. Like I said, right from out of the gate, like, emergency services people are underrepresented on your podcast. Like, they're out there. I know they're out there. Mm-hmm. I worked with 2 that freaking took themselves out. And that's just me in rural Canada. Like, I can't imagine New York City. I would just hope that these people in emergency services can recognize some symptoms maybe a little earlier than I did. And, and just kind of some recognition that, like, when you start losing sleep, that's a big one, but it's not for everyone. Or, just your personality is changing a little bit. It's like, okay, what's going on here? How do I get this back in check? Like, that would be my message, is to don't dismiss that stuff so quick. And I'm not saying go and see a psychologist, but I am saying try and have discussions around that, whether they're beer talks at the bar with your buddies where you just kind of kick it around a bit. And I've seen that happen more and more. That's a conversation that's not as taboo as it used to. Like, I honestly think you can open that up fairly well, like how I just said. It's like, Ed, like, I went to a suicide the other day and it really bothered me. Like, I lost sleep over that the other night because it just, like, the girl was the same age as my daughter and I just can't get it out of my head. Like, next thing you know, that kicks off a pretty valuable conversation. It doesn't have to be so therapeutic or risk of your career. It can be some pretty casual talk over a beer or watching the ball game or whatever. That's an approach that I would take if I was doing my career over again, is I would gently suggest these kind of things. Feel the water out a bit. Like, if your colleague says, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I never have, okay, well, maybe try a different colleague, or pretty much guarantee that if you were to say, I went to a freaking accident scene last week, and here's what happened when this happened with this tire, and it's really bothering me. Like, I can't get it out of my head. Has anything like that happened to you? And I can pretty much guarantee it'd be like, geez, the other week I was at a thing and the thing happened and I can't get it out of my head. I think those conversations need to happen. And I think that they're easier now than they've ever been. Again, I'm not emphasizing, hey, go to your boss and tell him you're crying on the side of the highway. I'm not saying that. Be aware of these little signs that show up early, because they start like this. And then it's like, work at the end of their life, freaking monsters after 20 years.
Exactly.
I'm emphasizing emergency services because, especially with what we've been under since COVID and all that crazy shit, I'm glad I wasn't a cop during COVID. Glad I wasn't an ambulance, freaking an EMT during COVID, or those guys. Like, that's pretty freaking rugged territory, mental health wise. Like, wow. I know it's not gotten any easier. I know that for a guarantee.
If somebody's listening to this, then they already know that the word suicide is in the name and probably know what it's about. But it's worth saying, because you don't know who's listening, even if suicide's not on your radar, and let's even make pretend it never will be. We can't have that kind of crystal ball. Right. If you don't deal with this stuff, chances are your life is going to be shitty.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're never contemplating, so even the idea of that is foreign and stays that way, your life will be worse. Just leave it at that.
Oh, completely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. Again, if you'd have told me 20 years ago, I would have been staring in a mirror at 2:30 in the morning, contemplating. You just don't know where these things are going to come up, right? Like I don't put myself in the same category as a lot of your callers, a lot of your guests have been in. I don't put myself there. However, again, like I emphasize, like, I'm starting to question it once in a while. Like, it's starting to kind of creep into the mindset a little bit. That's pretty serious. So there's different degrees, I guess. Like, the spectrum can be everything from, holy shit, I can't wait to freaking die today, to, I'm wondering now. I'm kind of so there's lots of variability in there.
Struggle is struggle. You're in it.
Yeah. Just having this chit chat with you today has just been like, I don't know. It takes a bit of stress off me. Actually, I feel less under the thumb of life now than I did a few hours ago. That's pretty damn good.
You're like sitting down, and whatever sparks, you're like, so this is it. This is the life. This is it. And it doesn't always sit so well. Is it going to get better? Maybe worse. We're getting older. Your body's going to keep hurting, bro.
That shit's starting to play into things too now. Yeah. I remember that old football injury. Oh, being in chronic pain, that's fucking depressing, man.
Yeah.
Like, it can knock the wind out of you big time.
Yeah.
Like, chronic pain. It's like, oh, fuck. What's the point? And this is going to get any easier. Oh, it'll be better when I'm 65. You really?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, right. But you're decaying. We're dying, which is the irony of the podcast. We're dying anyway. God forbid you should do it sooner than you're supposed to do it. What's supposed to? Like a natural death. Okay, yeah, I get it, but
I like that. I like that. You're dying anyway. Like
you're dying.
Like in 1,000 years, is it gonna matter? Like in 100 years, in 50, like I said, and I'll repeat myself, but I think what you're doing is, I think your format, and your approach, and everything you're doing I think it's freaking spot on, man.
Thank you.
Like really, really, I wouldn't be freaking. We wouldn't have had a multiple hour conversation if I thought you were full of shit, like so much of the other garbage out there. I'd be like, fuck this.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Keep listening if it serves you in any way.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll listen to your episode?
I probably will. There's more curiosity about. I wonder what made it. What hit the cutting room floor. We got a problem here. What the hell is my freaking book title?
Memoir title.
You did not tell me my memoir title throughout this whole thing.
No one's ever called me on it. I appreciate that.
You can hold that thought for a bit, but I do expect to hear it somewhere.
Before we leave, do you have an idea of what it is? Admittedly, you don't have my gift, but it's your life.
I don't have anything off the top of my head other than the messed up Mountie. I just had a thought come to me. Like, I've listened to obviously a number of your guests, and some of the freaking horror stories, man, their interactions with emergency services, police, and it freaking hurts. I've had to be that guy. I treated a particular person who is under, obviously going through a massive mental health issue. My job as the police was to get them to the hospital. I'm basically just a glorified taxi at this point. So I get this lady, she'd be whatever in her mid-30s, and she was very calm and agreeable. You're going through, and I was trying to be as freaking delicate as possible. It was a rough time, and what do you say? Just give you a lift down. I know it's terrible and everything. What do you? Yeah, okay. And I was thinking, well, policy, and freaking police policy. There's no coincidence that those words are very similar. Every person that is a mental health, call it risk or contact, they are to be handcuffed. I never agreed with it. Had my issue with that. This particular lady, I was just like, you know what? I'm going outside of policy on this one. You just have yourself a seat in the back of this car, and the boss isn't here. He doesn't need the seat. Well, I get halfway to the hospital, man, and I look back, and the divider, I look back, it's covered in blood. So I get the car stopped. Well, she had freaking slashed herself, and she was laying on the back seat, essentially bleeding out in the back of my car. So now my situation has changed dramatically. I'm like light siren now to the hospital. Like this person has minutes. And I get her there and I do my thing, turn her over to the emergency people, and I'm covered in blood. Backseat of my car is covered in blood. And now I have to explain to my bosses what happened. And when I bring up, how did she manage to do that? Was she handcuffed? And I'm like, well, no, she wasn't. And I'm telling you, the grilling that I got, I was just like, I used judgment on that particular call, and wow. And so I've heard guests talk about stories about, oh my God, how they were treated. And I'm just like, oh, that just sucks so bad. She was so agreeable and so docile and so I was just like, she's not a threat. She's not a threat at all. I'm not. And so fast. I literally was driving down the road and I'm always looking back. And it was like a matter of seconds, man.
Do you know why she was agreeable?
Because she knew she was going to that's it. I'm out.
One thing I've learned is I think, and again, this is just for my guest. That's not necessarily a sample of all. People are actually rather calm when they are approaching their own death this way, when they're actually trying, not always.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you're feeling when you're jumping off a bridge, right? That goes against what people often say. They're not always hysterical. They're not always out of their minds. Sometimes they are, not often. Two, I'm digressing here a little bit, because there's a guy who makes a lot of fucking money talking about suicide prevention. He's the guy, you might have heard of him. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and he lived. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. I'm sure he means every word he says. He said the moment he jumped off, he regretted it. The thing about it is his main message is, I felt that way. you're going to feel that way. Well, guess what? That is when I started asking the question on my podcast, do you regret it? Do you wish that had worked?
Yes, right.
And you know what I found? At least from what people are telling me, and that's all I've got to go by, not a small number wish it had worked. Not a small number are planning their death.
I think more and more people are searching for authenticity. We're starting to get tired of the glossy and the bikini chick babes and the fucking bullshit that's on YouTube. And I think it's starting to come back a little bit. It's pulling back a bit. People are like, and that's why when I mentioned earlier, we're starting to I think there's more interest in long form conversation and real talk about real stuff, because things have got so stupidly freaking fake in the last 5-10 years. When I retired, at least my takeaway is like I can honestly look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, did you treat people freaking fairly and with respect? It's a yes with a few glitches. I'm like, well, okay, you're a freaking human too. You fucked up a few times. But for the greater majority of my time serving the public in a police position, yeah, I was pretty good to people. So that's my takeaway. In spite of what it did to me psychologically, I never, that wasn't projected out into. So that, and thank God for that, because I would hate to be sitting here right now thinking, man, you were a fucking dick. That would really bother me. So at least today I can say, no, tough job. You did pretty good. You did 91% pretty awesome and a few percent not so good. My freaking psychological shit didn't start happening until I retired. So don't think for a second that, once I'm out of this line of work, my life is freaking good. And it's quite common that happens. So just a little heads up, right? Like, take care of that freaking gray matter, whatever that means to you. Pay attention to the symptoms and the signs, because, that's a heads up that I'd like to put out there. Life, fuck.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's cliche, but we do the best we can. Well, I think we do.
No, exactly. Some people's best may not look very good, but it is their best.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much for this very interesting conversation, which didn't feel long, but now that I'm looking up my clock, I'm like, damn.
This was really, I really enjoyed the back and forth that we had today, Sean. I appreciate your time on that. I know it's going to, you got a little bit of work ahead of you here, but
I'm good. Don't sweat it. We're good. I appreciate the time. If nothing else, I hope you've somehow managed to get better sleep, but I know that's an ongoing chronic thing.
Dude, it's priority one on my list. I really appreciate, you responded to me very quickly. You're a freaking awesome dude to sit down and have a conversation with. Thanks. And I get that not just from this interaction, but from your other guests. Keep doing what you're doing, man. It's been a real pleasure, Sean. I appreciate your time.
Likewise.
Take care.
Take care. As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to M up in New Brunswick. Thank you, M. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com on Facebook or X @suicidenoted. Check the show notes to learn more about the podcast, including our membership. But however you are involved or participate, thank you. That is all for episode number 221. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.